Hi, everyone, and welcome to Dive In, a twice-monthly conversation about anything and everything ocean for conservation enthusiasts of all ages. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur. And you?
I'm Sylvia Earle. I'm an oceanographer, explorer in residence, National Geographic, and founder of Mission Blue, and an ocean elder.
Very good. Today, we're going to be holding a special dive-in to address the situation that's going on in the Galapagos Islands, where an enormous fishing fleet, more than 340 ships, have been extracting fish and squid right at the edge of a World Heritage Site. We're going to be joined by two special guests, marine activist Cristina Mittermeier from Sea Legacy and conservation policy expert Max Bello from Mission Blue. They're going to help us understand what's going on and what we can do about it. But before we get started, let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping because we know we have a lot of attendees today from all around the world who may want to participate. Later on in the broadcast, if you want to ask a question via text, you can put it in the Q&A section, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. If you want to call in and speak to us live, use the raise your hand icon at the bottom bar of the Zoom screen. And throughout the conversation today, we'll be adding some links for the attendees in the chat box. Mm-hmm. So now, we're going to go to the screen share.
And we always start with a recognition, because everybody should acknowledge that the world
is blue.
Is blue. It is. Just look at it. And we should dive in.
And here we are.
Everybody ready? Go get wet.
Let's get wet. So here are the Galapagos Islands. It was really first brought to the attention of explorers in the 1800s with the visit of Charles Darwin.
Yeah, 200 years ago, Charles Darwin was 11 years old.
Think about
and
that one.
That was at the same time that the first glimpse of Antarctica took place 200 years ago. So some of you listening may be 11 years old, and if not, just think about what you knew that Charles Darwin could not know at the age of 11.
Exactly.
We've learned so much so fast, and much of what we know is because of great minds such as Darwin, who was the first to explore as a scientist and bring back insights from this amazing place on the planet.
It truly is a remarkable area. It really wasn't recognized as a park until 1959, and that's also spurred the beginning of ecotourism there. In 1970, around 5,000 people a year kind of got there one way or another. Usually it was kind of a big effort to get there.
When I first was there, actually 1966, only about 1,000 people were there. That was the beginning of the sort of escalation of people coming from the mainland and from elsewhere in the world to establish a presence on the islands. But only 3% of the land is occupied by people. 97% has actually, because of the park, been reserved for the wild animals and plants, for the nature, for as a living laboratory in a sense. And it's respected around the world. But they really got it in terms of protecting the land. But we're just beginning to understand the importance of protecting the surrounding ocean.
We've got a short video that we were going to try to share here.
All right. Of all the islands in the oceans of the world, one group, more than any other, has changed the way people look at the planet and the forces that shape it. The Galapagos Islands, the Enchanted Islands, the Islands of Fire, located in the Pacific Ocean, about 1,000 kilometers offshore from Ecuador. As a young man, Charles Darwin visited there in 1835 and was amazed by the creatures he saw. Giant tortoises, flightless cormorants, iguanas, all living side by side with fur seals and penguins right on the equator. It became his laboratory for the study of the origins of life. What Darwin did not see were the Galapagos Islands underwater. If you fly over them, you can see 19 big islands and dozens of rocky islets projecting above the water's surface. But if you could hitch a ride on a turtle or a whale, or could imagine draining away the surrounding Pacific Ocean, you would see the real Galapagos Islands, a chain of undersea mountains, a submerged archipelago that stretches for hundreds of miles and hosts a lively assemblage of underwater plants and animals, including many that live there and only there. Deep, cold ocean currents converge under the equatorial sun, a natural living laboratory on the land and in the surrounding sea. Yeah. The surrounding sea.
The surrounding sea, which is now being surrounded by fishing vessels.
You know, because the territory of every coastal nation can claim out to 200 miles, what you see around that Galapagos Islands in the center of the image, that line is the exclusive economic zone. Ecuador, the government of Ecuador has jurisdiction around that, and you see those other lines are bumping into the jurisdiction of other coastal nations. And Max is going to talk a bit about the opportunities that are just now coming into focus about how together protection for the ocean can begin to mirror what we know works for the land.
Right. I mean, since the 1970s and right up to sort of the time of the pre-pandemic, the Galapagos was having 275,000 visitors a year that were coming there to see the wildlife, coming to see the iguanas, the tortoises, and so forth.
It's a principal economic driver.
Right. And they'd be really kind of mortified if they were served iguana in a restaurant, but they really don't think too much about serving up the fish.
Even those that are endemic.
Right.
Yeah. It's just a lack of really understanding that the ocean needs to be treated with a similar kind of respect.
Exactly.
Wildlife in the ocean.
And clearly, you know, the wildlife of Galapagos has an enormous economic value alive. I mean, much greater than it does dead.
Yeah, that's been demonstrated time and again about how sharks in Palau have a greater value alive than dead. We just need to expand that concept. And as Christina will get into it a bit later about the importance of wildlife in the ocean as it relates to climate change. These are carbon-based units. We think about trees, of course, and we should, but we need to think about the carbon in the ocean, the living carbon that really drives climate and weather. I mean, it's the carbon cycle, when you come right down to it, that we've neglected the ocean part.
Why don't we ask Christina and Max to both
join in, jump in, dive in.
Dive in. So if you can share your screens.
Oh, there you are.
And yay, there they are. Hey, how are you both?
Hello, Sylvia. Hello, Liz. How are you?
It's great to see you. Max?
Hey, guys. Miss you all, and in particular, I'm missing you, seeing you underwater. All of you. That will be the best place to meet again.
Well, this is a little bit better. So look at these guys. You know, this is one of the iconic species, one of the global species that passes through Galapagos, and is really driving the accumulation of these extractive vessels that are out there.
It's because, curiously, these animals are valued more dead than alive. We used to think that way about whales, but now we understand the living value of whales on many fronts, including the carbon value. At the World Economic Forum earlier this year, it was amazing to hear the economists talk about the value of blue carbon in whales. That every whale has a huge value alive, and a dead whale has a value too, but it's small compared to the living value. And it's true with tuna too.
They're long-lived.
Long-lived, and they're because of their global presence. They're part of the carbon cycle is really critical, and we've been depleting these fish, just turning them into groceries, if you will, mostly for luxury consumption.
Yeah, no one really needs to eat a tuna, that
No.
I can imagine.
There is a food security issue for some relative to the ocean, but it's small compared to the amount it's being taken from the ocean for luxury consumption. Like, who needs to eat sharks? Nobody really.
This image was taken by Amos Nahum, who we had on our last episode, and just seeing the abundance of these hammerheads. I know you were saying before that the Galapagos was one of the sharkiest places you'd ever
Oh,
been to
and
when you
hammerheads
first
in
went there.
particular, but a whole suite of shark species, silkies, Galapagos sharks, the black tip sharks. There still are some black tips in fair abundance. They tend to be closer to shore, but these oceanic species are really being hammered.
Oh,
Hammerheads are being
ha.
hammered. Really, tremendous loss. Yeah.
And the DNA testing has showed up that some of these, our friend Sharon Kwok Pong here was really doing the heavy lifting in Hong Kong to try to figure out where the sharks are coming from, where the shark fins are being impounded, and some of them come right back to being directly associated with Galapagos extraction.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
It's really,
actually, just like 2 months ago, there was a huge shipment that it was confiscated in Hong Kong. It's actually the biggest shipment ever confiscated in Hong Kong. 26 tons of dry fins. I mean, a dry fin weighed nothing, which means that there were thousands and thousands of sharks were killed for this fins. And interestingly, also, some scientists just came out with these numbers of more than they did a DNA test in Hong Kong market, and they found more than 70% of the fins of hammerhead sharks are actually from this region.
yeah.
That's just insane.
It's a wonder
Because,
they're
you
any
know,
left
Max,
at all.
we have this premise that if you protect an area, it becomes like a fish bank, right? It's you're investing in fish that are going to grow bigger, they're going to reproduce better, because am I right, Sylvia, that a bigger fish makes more eggs? And
Yeah.
eventually, these fish are supposed to spill out of these marine protected areas where they can benefit for sure local fishermen. But I just don't think that these marine resources were ever, uh, you know, we should have never been mining them as industrial commodities.
No.
No.
And
And
that's what's happening here, right?
how
Yeah.
how is it that just a few countries are continuing to profiteer off of the ocean in such an extreme way?
And those
I don't think it's a few
too.
countries. I think it's a few companies, a few
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
We are part of the problem, those of us who buy ocean wildlife. I mean, even those species that are special to the Galapagos appear on the menu. I mean, you don't, as Liz pointed out, you tend not to go to the Galapagos and expect to eat the flightless cormorants or the penguins.
On my very first trip there, the sea cook on board the ship sent a crew over the side to pick up enough lobster to feed everyone on the ship lobster. And these are the endemic slipper lobster. And like, what? Really? You didn't send them on the shore to bring back booby eggs or.
Do you think, Liz, that, and I've heard your mom talk about this, it's because people are used to seeing wildlife from the ocean swimming in butter, right? Not swimming in the ocean. So
Right.
we need to recast animals from the sea as wild creatures, not as food only, right?
And in that regard, like these endemic
Salima.
Salima, right? People don't, I mean, people do eat them, but they're much more important to the animals of Galapagos, the ones that people are paying a lot of money to come see, than they are on anyone's plate.
Yeah.
I mean, look at if you want to come
Absolutely.
see these penguins, what are they supposed to eat if they don't have the Salina?
And
And I think we have to be thinking also at a time when the carbon load on our atmosphere is so massive. Every single creature that's made of carbon should be left where it is, because it is a carbon sink. And the biomass of animals like these salimas and all the other foundation fish is massive. Just leave it where it is until we figure out, what the carbon solution is. We shouldn't be removing a single creature from the ocean.
Yeah.
Well,
It's interesting, that I was reading some of the questions too. For example, what is the evidence of marine protected areas? There's plenty of evidence about how marine protected areas, like there's this tiny little place, Cabo Pulmo, no, in Mexico, that shows like almost 500% of biomass have been, growing. That is incredible. It is crazy. And then you have also the Papahanaumokuakea new evidence that appeared now and everything. And on the other side, we have this incredible evidence how actually fishing in the way that we've been doing is actually been, destroying the stocks on Earth. And just look at the FAO, which actually is very conservative on what they show in their numbers. Now, 30% overfish, 60% on, kind of fully exploitation. Well, that fully exploitation for most scientists is actually already overfishing. So we can actually be talking about 90% of the stocks of the world are overfished. So, if that doesn't worry people, I don't know what.
Max, I went to university in the 1980s, and I remember there were no women really working in this except for you, Sylvia. I remember in my little university in Mexico browsing through this issue of National Geographic. It had an article that you published in 1980 called Exploring the Deep Frontier. And even back then we were talking about these collapsed fisheries, Max. We've known for a long time. And now it's 80% of all fisheries in the world are overfished. We really need to rethink our relationship with animals from the ocean as a resource that helps humanity, exactly, and not just as something that's exploited as a commodity.
Right, and you think about all of these animals in Galapagos, the albatross, the boobies. The albatross fly so far to go out and bring the isn't he adorable? Yeah.
Is that a bad feather day?
Bad feather day. Like some of us with our hair right now, right?
I love it.
But these birds have to go so far to gather up enough food to feed these guys
Hungry babies.
Well, it's like the bottomless pit of baby birds. The babies actually outweigh the parents at some point because they're just being fed so much. And they've got to have that
to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people ask me, Liz, all the time, what can I do? And the answer is so simple in everyday decision, right? You have a choice. Give fish a break. Don't order the fish. Order the pasta.
Go low on the food chain. And
every time you do that, you give these animals a break.
Think of it as wildlife trade. We are concerned about trade in elephants and
Pangolin.
tigers and pangolins, and we should be. But why are we not similarly concerned about tuna and swordfish? It's the carbon cycle. The land, the sea, it all comes together. And of course we're a part of it. But often we justify what we extract from the ocean as food security. Well, it's food security for the man-of-war birds. It's food security, oh my goodness, for the pelicans and for all the other creatures who have no choices. That is all they, over gazillions of years, they're tuned in to the cycle. But we're newcomers. It's
Sylvia,
only
can
in
you
the
talk a
last...
little bit about, I heard you speak at some point and you were talking about this idea that some people have that we're going to move to Mars and we're going to go on this spaceship. And you said something really profound. You said every single breath that we breathe, every drop of water has to come from here because this is the only planet that makes it, right?
Well, it's life. It's a living planet. If we went back to the beginning of Earth, there'd be water perhaps and rocks. But it's the living ocean and the living land. It's life that makes our existence possible. And of course we extract from nature. All creatures do. But no creature has taken on a level that threatens not only our existence, but disrupting this harmony that has developed over hundreds of millions of years. But the good news is we know we're also the only creature with the capacity to dive back into the past and know how old the planet is, and to anticipate the future, to see the trajectory that we've been talking about. 80%, 90% of the fish already declined. Imagine if we did not know that. We still have a chance. We've still got 10% of the sharks. There's still maybe on the order of 3% of the bluefin tuna left in the Pacific Ocean. So when you think, what, only 3% from what was there in the 1970s? What are we thinking? Why are we still eating tuna? But because people have developed this habit, they've created a luxury market. It's not a need, it's a choice.
And
It's
it's a
true.
perception, that if it's being offered in a grocery store, it must be okay.
That's
Right.
somehow.
Exactly.
But it's
We're
not
gonna
okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day, because somebody actually was saying, we don't need to worry about protecting life on this planet because we're all going to move to Mars.
Good. Let them go.
So
Outlandish.
On my list of those who can go.
I know. Has Elon Musk sent you your ticket yet, Sylvia?
Yeah,
Because I
exactly.
don't think I'm being invited.
Yeah.
But if we were going to board this ship, because you've been in these submarines, right? And when you step out of the comfort zone of a human into a spaceship or submarine, you really need to know every detail about this life support system that's going to carry you across a new space. And if
right.
you were going to go on Elon Musk's ship, he would give you such a briefing on every aspect of the ship, where the water comes from, where the waste goes. But here we are on our little spaceship that you showed at the beginning, floating across space all alone. And we are being callous and wasteful and stupid.
The best
Exactly.
proof is that the kids are growing up with knowledge that Darwin could not have, that I did not know. No one knew what Earth looked like from space.
Mhm.
You grew up with that knowledge, and Max, you've got some little family of 3 kids who are just amazing what they know at the age of 3, at the age of 5. Amazing. They are armed with that superpower of knowing. That's cause for hope.
I wanted
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to point this picture that Christina sent to us of this sort of lone hammerhead and contrast that to the image we saw earlier that Amos sent to us. They're taken about 10 years apart, right? And it just
Mhm.
shows you this drastic decline.
You're lucky to see a hammerhead. Sometimes you can see a number of them. I was there Max and I were there together within the past year, and we saw a few hammerheads together, but nothing like
The
just
shoals,
just
beautiful shoals.
as far as you could see hammerheads.
Yeah, but that was the same experience I had, Sylvia. I had gone like you, with the hopes of being in the middle of this big school of fish. And we didn't see that many. Most of the time we saw one or two. And as you know, diving in, Darwin and Wolf with these animals congregate, right, in this little pieces of land in the middle of nowhere. It's difficult diving. It was difficult to be there. The seas were big, and the last dive that I did, this was probably one of the most difficult dives of my life. I thought I was going to die. I got separated from the group.
Oh,
Big
wow.
current picked me up and started, taking me out to sea. And you know what I thought? I'm not aborting this dive. There's stuff to see. I looked up, Sylvia. There's the biggest whale shark I've ever seen. And as I'm drifting alone, I looked in the distance and I did see a school of sharks. They emerged like ghosts there's this apparition that's just almost hard to believe. But there were only 20, 25 sharks, nothing like what Amos saw. And for me, the knowledge that the sharks are leaving the protection of the marine reserve, traveling to Cocos Island, and that's where they get caught, right? So I was hoping that maybe we could explore that, what happens to these animals when they leave the marine reserve.
Well, I saw there was an article just came out this week about the whale shark that named Hope. It was tagged with a GPS tracking device and went through the park, went out to where the fleet is, and the GPS went off the map.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Esperanza, hope, was it's missing still, sadly. However, I mean, I think, you know, this is the thing. I think, you know, for what you've been saying, and I'm so glad that you guys, I mean, I'm honored actually to be with you three women that have been doing so much and calling the attention of the world. I think it's just amazing to be here and talking for, you know, such an important and key place on Earth. I mean, if we can get more protection to Galapagos, and then where? You know, like, I mean,
Right.
Galapagos is the obvious one. It's so easy. And I have to say, you know, some people have been asking for things. Galapagos actually National Park have been doing a great job for many years. They have actually invested so much, and you know, they captured this Chinese vessel which had also hundreds of sharks inside a couple of years ago that brought many people. And this is the key element here. Ecuadorians have been asking for a couple of years already for an expansion, for more protection for Galapagos. And we are just joining that effort, the Ecuadorian sort of effort. And it is key, not just for Galapagos, but for the world, no? I have had the opportunity to dive in places where I have seen nothing but water and rocks. And I came out from this place and I came out crying. And I look on my side, another guy comes out of the water, and we look at each other and we start crying. I've never seen him, I never met him before. We hugged, we were crying, both of us, like, how is this possible? How we can actually get to this point? No, and just, it is crazy to me that we need to create these marine protected areas. Polynesians have done marine protected areas, by the way, for more than 1,000 years. They work well. We can do more, but we need a lot more than this, for sure.
Yes, and so this is where I wanted to kind of ask you guys if you have been following. Last year, there was a paper published in the journal Nature by Dr. Carlos Duarte and about 20 of our other favorite ocean scientists. And the title of the paper is beautiful, Sylvia. It's called Rebuilding Marine Life. Yeah. And they give us a path to get there in this generation. We can do it in 10 years. I mean, if that's not hopeful, I don't know what is.
We can be part of the action, you know?
That's right. And they give us a path with these 6, they call them wedges. They're like challenges. And the first one, Max, is we need to create more marine protected areas. We definitely, I mean, I know.
Big.
I know. And so this is an opportunity for the president of Galapagos to answer this challenge. Secondly, we need to protect more species. We need to create like the mechanisms that prevent them from being trafficked across countries. We need to stop pollution. And that's not just plastic, you know, that is sewage, fertilizer, antibiotics, all the stuff that I heard you saying once in a talk, Sylvia, it stuck with me. We've taken too much out and we have dumped too much in.
Yeah, all the pharmaceuticals, all this stuff.
It's just, well, in Mauritius right now, the oil spill, I mean, it was so senseless. It's just,
I know, so senseless, so necessary. Then, we also have to rethink fisheries. We have to recast animals from the ocean as wildlife, not as seafood.
That beautiful picture that you took of the whale shark, you could see the spots. We know that everyone has an individual arrangement. And then you had another picture of a hogfish from below, that beautiful blue fish. They're individuals too. Everyone
is part of an ecosystem.
That school of Selima, you know, it looks like, just dashes of silver. Everyone has a face.
Yeah.
Everyone depends on each other.
We've got fingerprints. We have our special DNA. If we had the patience to look at 1,000 of the little Selima, they're all different. And yet we measure fish by the ton. We don't measure them as individuals. We don't even give them the dignity of saying, we've got 1,000 Selima or 20 tunas. No, you've got a ton of tuna.
Right. And I think we were talking that each of those fishing vessels that's out there at the edge of the park is capable of taking 1,000 tons of ocean wildlife per catch.
How many individuals, how many lives are...
It's hard to tell when you've only seen a tuna in hand, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, I mean, people get confused. So also, you know, for people to know, the Chinese have more than 17,000 boats out there, not just only fishing on, that's the number, is the biggest, you know, fleet as a whole, as a country around the world, but then many other countries are fishing out there too, and the
Absolutely.
Ecuadorians itself. There is a lot of pressure over the ocean. The problem is that from the 200 miles out, there's no regulations at all. And this is a momentum for Ecuadorians, for Ecuador. And this is me there in Galapagos, which I love. I just want to go
Look at
back
your
to.
smile.
And so I want to, I want to tell people this is, a critical moment for Ecuador. Ecuador can show light into this, way to actually how we need to do things. And then I think this is what struck me. I think we're in a race in this country, in this world. But there are two races. I think there's one that basically it's just trying to take more and more from the ocean and from the planet just to make more money.
Yeah,
And there's
it comes back to that.
other group of the planet that is racing to save the planet.
We call it food security, but it's creating insecurity for the stability of the way the planet functions. So
I took that photo also now in November when we were there, and I have to say also, Sylvia and I, we were diving, and there was like this current that you were saying, Cristina, strong current, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna end up somewhere in the other side of the ocean here.
That's what I was worried about, Max.
Dive, yeah.
And then I see Sylvia, and Sylvia is like, someone is trying to kind of help her, and of course she doesn't want help at all, and she's smacking someone else's hand. Leave me alone. Leave me. I'm like, I am not sure if I can get down there, and she's like, I can make it. You are amazing, Sylvia. I mean,
Yeah,
incredible.
people don't worry about the sharks. They just worry about like irritating her, right?
Can I talk about the last two wedges, because I think it's
Oh
important
yeah,
to mention.
I'm gonna pop back to the wedge real quick.
Even as
There
we
you go.
continue to allow the destruction of mangroves and coral reefs, there has to be a massive effort to restore these habitats that have been degraded so far. That's key. And the last one, and I don't think people understand the connection between a living ocean and climate change, because there's a miniature rainforest in
it's
every
so
drop of
fundamental.
water. I know. And I heard Sylvia once say that if you take a gulp of ocean water, you're not drinking water, you're drinking a living broth of living organisms that are producing oxygen and are sinking carbon. But this biological pump only works if every other piece is there as well, right, Sylvia? It has to be alive.
it's like the computer. You start taking pieces out, and suddenly it goes wacky.
Yeah.
Or like the orchestra, you throw away some of the instruments, and it doesn't sound as good as it did before.
And I think
Yeah,
the real thing about your slide here with the wedges is that they all have to be done all at once.
That's right, Liz. We
Yeah.
don't have a choice or the luxury of picking just one. We have to address them all, and we have to address them together. We all have a role to play.
Right. And that's really these calls to action. We know that there's big political things that can happen that can really make a meaningful difference. And I'm going to switch back to a couple of the other slides here so Max can. Oh, one more whale shark.
Look at her,
They're
she's so
like
big.
buses. I mean, they're so big.
City bus.
They're
That's
just,
Max's picture. Yeah.
yeah, incredible.
Right. But coming back here to the economic zone, and these other countries, they can, the same way that each of us can do one things and make some differences. These countries can maybe work a little better together.
Yeah, I think we need to understand that our limits are not life's limits for nature. I mean, when we were there in November, we put some satellite tags on a hammerhead shark with Alex Hearn, this incredible scientist, and we actually saw that shark go into Cocos Island, and then a couple of weeks after to Malpelo. I mean, these animals are moving around, and we think, that we have this. So that's the importance of actually growing this marine protected areas, like huge, not just for this species that we've been mentioning, so many others, and then connecting them. So we need also to ask these other countries to also increase their marine protected areas. That is key for saving these animals.
What do we say? Bigger. Bigger.
Home for a whale shark is the ocean.
Yeah. And this one is really interesting, Max, kind of showing this connectivity and how these animals travel. When you have the turtles, the whale sharks, the hammerheads, many others, the mantas, all these animals go back and forth. They're
Yeah.
not, they don't know where the EEZ is. They have,
That's
nor
a
do they
human
care.
concept.
Yeah, they really don't know.
I mean, there's even connectivity with, remote places like Easter Island.
Mm-hmm.
There are some registers of, sea turtles actually being in Galapagos and then being in Easter Island. That is incredible. I mean, that's what the animals do. They use the ocean to moving around.
And then also to Malpelo, you see that on the map. These are known tracks from tagged individuals, but tagged individuals do show up at places along the way. There are swimways, corridors that are like super highways, but it's like human beings. You go off road sometimes.
And I think it's really important as well for people to remember that so many of these places are not only connected by the pieces that stick out of the water, but the topography below the water and the areas that create these massive, some of those big currents that you're talking about battling against, but the big upwellings and the confluence of these currents together, where the Humboldt current comes through, and how the animals travel in those, and it allows this real diversity of life, where you can get something like penguins and iguanas in the same,
and sea lions.
And sea lions in the same place at the same
Mike,
time.
I have a question, because one of my favorite speeches of all time is Martin Luther King, and he opened his speech with a dream. And so if I ask you to give us the dream, what will happen? I mean, in a perfect world, the president of Ecuador will do what? And then Costa Rica will do what? Tell me, what's the idea?
Well, can I answer? I think,
Play God, play wizard.
we are now gearing up for getting a new objective at CVD. The 30 by 30, you might have heard about the 30 by 30s. 30% of protection, and this is key, it has a surname of highly and fully protection for the ocean. And this is at least, this is the other key element, it's at least 30%. Look, I'm going to tell you, today there's about 7% protected. And of that 7%, only 2.9 it is highly and fully. I mean, in other words, we can sell, or the ocean is for sale in more than 97%. I mean, that doesn't sound right, no? And
Backwards.
It's no way to treat your life support system.
Exactly. It's like, okay, I'm going to save only, you always said, Sylvia, I'm going to save only 30% of my body. Nobody does that. You try to take care of yourself as a whole, your whole family. It's not you cut a line in your family and say, I want to just take care of this part of the family. No, it is not. So, I think that this is what we need. We need to take care of this family, our fish, our families, our sharks, our whales, our everything. And this escape that we're looking into this map, it shows you how much we need to increase. Panama need to do their part. Colombia need to do their part, and Costa Rica for sure. But today is the day for Galapagos to show this leadership. And I want to ask President Moreno, please go ahead. It's going to be good for everything, for business, for everything. I mean, it's going to be good for everyone, but particularly for the health of the world.
That's right.
So can individual people help? Would it help to send the president a tweet?
Yeah,
I'll tweet.
That would be great.
Personal letter,
but tweet out to him. Thank him for having this kind of wisdom and vision to really step up and offer this protection for these iconic areas, all this wildlife, and get the same level of protection for the animals in the sea that the animals on land enjoy.
So he has a great Twitter handle. It's at Lenin. Lenin, at Lenin, that's the president of Ecuador. And you can just say, please protect the Galapagos. We thank you for your visionary leadership.
Yes.
Yeah, it's easy. And I mean, it's
one thing you can do.
One thing, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But what are some other things, Max? What are some other
things you need to tune, because there will be a petition for the expansion, a specific tune for this, because it's coming as one of those petitions that you sign online. That would be great if we can get everyone to sign this petition, and we're going to post it as soon as possible. as we said, I mean, like, do everything you have in your hands to actually, request your authorities to call the government of Ecuador to actually say it. Also, everyone, this is a key thing. The ocean doesn't belong only to those who are actually exploiting it.
Yeah.
We normally ended up this conversation only with the fishermen. Like, who said that the fishermen are actually the only owners of the ocean? Every single Ecuadorian can say what they want about what needs to happen with this ocean, and that is critical. Every
Alive.
Ecuadorian needs to get on board. There's the Pacifico Libre, there's the SOS or SOS Galapagos, there's the Frente Insular, is Más Galapagos, the campaign that that brings everyone together and to convince that this is a good decision, even for those who are not in favor of it. In the end, it will be like it was actually for the reserve before. The industry have seen a 99% of increase of the fishing stocks from the first reserve. So if you grow it, guess what? You're gonna have more too. I mean,
bigger fish make more bigger fish.
Right. And I know that the ocean elders have sent a letter to the president already, really reiterating the urgency of the situation and supporting the measures for the increased protection as well.
And it also
How awesome would it be, Liz?
Yeah.
It's also timely to recognize the importance of the high seas.
Right.
Within the national jurisdiction, there's heightened power of countries, but countries need to join together, and countries are people after all. Use your voice. Protect the high seas. It's half of the world. It's where the greatest amount of carbon is actually taken up. It's the blue heart of the planet, connecting with coastal areas.
Do you think there's a chance, if the president of Ecuador was really truly visionary and he decided to expand this marine protection, do you think there's ever, a world in which the president of Costa Rica gets really inspired and decides to expand his marine protected area and create this, borderless transition place for these animals? Wouldn't that be awesome?
Him too.
And Panama.
From a country that we actually, a few years ago, President Piñera was now in his first term, he created the first marine protected area, a no-take area, huge no-take area, 120,000 kilometers square, Motu Motiro Hiva. And then President Bachelet got from the 4% of protection to the 43% of protection. And highly and fully. And I mean, this is the country with the 7th biggest economic exclusive zone on earth. Everybody can do it. And Latin America is showing a little bit of this, incredible effort. Mexico did it too. Even Brazil did it too. And I know Colombia did a little bit of their part. And I know all the countries are gearing up for that. We need a lot more of that.
It's an idea whose time has come.
Right.
And it's really catching on. We need the critical mass. We need that tipping point where my protected area is bigger than yours.
That's right. And I really think that people always ask, what can I do? And I think it's really important to speak loudly and clearly to everyone about why it's important to not eat animals from, wild creatures from the ocean, why they need to stay there, why it matters to you. Right. Give fish a break. That's a good hashtag. And order the pasta and sign every petition that comes across your desk and tweet to these leaders, to encourage them to do the right thing. There's so much we all can do every day.
Absolutely. Every day.
You really make the point about the consumer, the individual consumer choices that are made each and every day. And they all hit each of the 6 wedges, right?
Climate change, number one.
The climate change, the pollution, the things you can do to restore biodiversity, starting in your own backyard,
in your own grocery store.
Your own grocery store, making the choice to, buy local and seasonal, read the labels, do the homework.
Low in the food chain.
Yeah.
And vote for people who care, right, Liz? I mean, we have to vote for people who are willing to listen to science, who are willing to look at the data, and who are willing to make change, because some of these fishery policies are just inertia. They just are happening because they have been happening, but there's no rhyme or reason.
You can change
for us to continue exploiting. Yeah.
So, I have a couple things more here to share with you guys. Look at what Melody, age 11,
Oh,
sent to us,
Today is World Manta Day. Woo!
right? And even better
today's
yet,
Manta Day. Hey,
Thank you, Melody. Oh my
Galapagos
goodness.
Dream. Thank you, Melody. So you said, 11 years old. What can you do? Look at this.
Yeah.
I hope some other kids will send in some illustrations to us as well, and ocean elders can share them. Maybe we'll show them in some of our next episodes of Dive In.
Sure,
But
about the Galapagos or your favorite place or your favorite creature,
your favorite hope spot?
your favorite hope spot.
The Galapagos is a hope spot, right?
Yes,
there's some
yes,
really awesome hope spots out there.
and Coiba, and Malpelo, all these places that the sharks and the tunas love as well as humans.
So we're going to get ready
So
to.
I hope, Sylvia, that 10 years from now, we can be sitting here again and we can be talking about, do you remember when we put this dream out there to the world and it happened? Look at us. We achieved regenerating life to our oceans. We can do it. It's possible. We can do it in this generation.
We're so lucky because now we know, and it's not too late. That's really the key. If 50 years from now, it will be too late for a lot of things that are now possible. So our job is to make sure that in 50 years, the doors are still open. There's still sharks. There's still bluefin tuna. That we will see this change. Maybe the pandemic has a small bright spot of enabling us to realize that we're not really in charge of the world. We're vulnerable to the laws of nature. We've got to respect nature, take care of the systems that make our existence possible. We become complacent. I say the biggest problem facing our future is still complacency and ignorance. The knowledge is there. Sometimes you have to stretch to get the information, but it's there. And I am heartened by the kids.
Absolutely.
Because
And I would love to invite everybody to go to only.one. We're inviting people into this conversation by sharing stories from the ocean and then giving people very specific actions that they can take so that they can become part of this motion forward. And Sylvia, you inspired me 30 years ago when I was in university, and you are still inspiring people. I want to thank you for everything you do and for speaking so loudly and so passionately on behalf of our oceans. You are amazing.
just listen to you. Huh.
All right, you
Yeah.
too. We have some
We're
questions.
having a love affair moment.
I know. That's stop.
I know, I want to be part too. Don't leave me.
We love you too, Max.
All right.
Well, I invite everyone to see not just the Mission Blue webpage, but the only one that you launched yesterday. It is incredible. It has like so many pieces. Guys, go and look for it, because not just incredible images, but the cases and the people coming together like Mission Blue does with the Hope Spot. I think it's so similar in the way that we're doing, and I love people to actually go and see it and join those calls.
Okay, we've got. Now we're taking questions.
Oh, good. Really good. More questions.
And if people have their hands raised, Arnold will interject and let us, call on them for us. But until then, let's see. We have Lorena is asking, how efficient are the enforcement regulations for the MPA in Galapagos, and who is doing it? Is it state or private agency?
So there are the park is actually doing the enforcement, and they've been doing in the last few years in particular an incredible job with the help of organizations like Wild Aid and with cameras, even on the small and the big vessels too. As I said before, they capture even this Chinese vessel that was the park with the Navy too. They've been doing a great job on those things, and I think they need to keep doing that. But it takes money and resources, too. But those resources are also an investment. I mean, it is an investment for the future. So we need to do more of that. But I have to congratulate the park that has been like so passionate about everything they do. I really respect them for what they do every day there.
And the new technology that now we use to show the Global Fishing Watch, for example,
Right.
satellite monitoring, that we used to say the fish have no place to hide. The fishermen now have no place to hide.
Well, it's interesting. In this particular case, they actually had the situation of the fishermen kind of spoofing their AIS so that they appeared that they were off the coast of New Zealand when they were really right there at the edge of the Galapagos EEZ. So it's
But if there are ways to see the ships even without
right.
requiring the electronic signaling that they're supposed to use properly,
Yeah.
you can see the tracks of what a vessel is doing. And if it's fishing where it should not be fishing, you can continue to track it right back to port.
I was just reading about this group. It's called Ocean Mind. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but that's what they do. They use data and big satellite technology, and they can see where the fishing fleets are with the satellites, and then they just alert the Coast Guard and they alert the port authorities. And, hopefully they can alert citizens like us, so that we can put pressure on our governments to do
Right.
more.
You're right. And that's one of another.
Just to say, the technology is being advancing. I mean, it's incredible. Now we have so much information, and people always in governments, in campaigns that have been working around the world, but how are we going to enforce this? It's too big what about the fleet that actually is out there too fishing? I mean, there's the same question too. How do you actually making sure that they're doing the right thing? There is information, there is technology right now that can show us, even those vessels that are not, showing by the VMS or whatever it is, you can still track them, you can still follow in them, as you said, with the Ocean Mind. And those are things, those tools are really important to continue using. And finally, we crack this, issue of the illegal fishing too.
Yeah, and seriously, no more tuna sandwich, no more. And
Oh,
when you go to your favorite sushi spot, order the yam roll. It's just as good.
Yeah.
No more tuna.
Better for you.
mushrooms, all those veggies are delicious.
No excuses, no more.
Liz, I'm going to jump in here because I noticed that our friend Amas has had his hand up forever to come in and say hello.
He's a
Amas,
patient man.
Are you there?
All right.
Unmute
Amas?
myself and I say, well,
Oh,
wonderful
Amos.
to see you all. And of course, Sylvia and Liz and Christine and I forgot your name, Max.
Yeah.
And the question I have, the issue was, the start of the conversation was about the fishing fleet, the Chinese fishing armada on the edge of the edge of the no fishing zone in Galapagos. Do we have any idea or any news what's happening now and what can be done or what is done in order to put them away from the zone? Because if there's no tourism, which is one of the main elements that was in the Galapagos, especially by Darwin and Wolf, we could see them and report about them. What's happening now that nobody is there, and how this been enforced to protect what we have left?
Well, Amos, I think that is a good question. First of all, the Chinese were outside of the EC, so the marine reserve it's to the 40 miles, and then there's a space, equatorial space, to up to 200 miles. This Chinese fleet were actually outside there in the high seas, and this for me is even more important to understand that yes, they might gonna go away from this area, but they are going to go somewhere else, fishing for the same species, maybe in front of Peru, maybe in front of Chile, and then maybe in front of Argentina, maybe in front of Uruguay. I mean, this is a global problem that we're talking here. The over exploitation that is fueled by subsidies. So there are few nations that actually give so much subsidies. And be aware, there is a discussion right now in the WTO about cutting those negative subsidies. That should have been happening so many years ago. And it's not just Chinese, it's the Spaniards, it's Portuguese, it is Japanese, it is Korean, it is so many other nations. And so we need to be aware of that. But also the fact that there's no regulation, and there are the RFMOs that hardly can manage a couple of species. I mean, and badly managed, by the way, because most of them are actually already exploited, or they're over the MSY, the famous MSY, or whatever you want to call it, the Covey, figure, whatever. They are over in any of those signs, and so we need to manage if we want to be managing the fish, we need to manage the ecosystem. There are fish that feed on fish, and we are not taking into account any of that. So that's a little bit of the picture, but we can go longer.
Well, if I could jump in about two aspects of this. Fish are regarded as free goods.
Absolutely.
We need to rethink the way we account for fish. They have a zero accounting base when they're alive. And in terms of like gross national product, our accounting base, we don't pay for the fish. We don't pay for the ocean. We just get the benefit of selling dead fish. But we lose, and we're not accounting for the loss of the live fish, for the carbon, for all those 6 factors that Cristina put out there. There's a value that we're not accounting for. We need to rethink our system of the other thing. Wild Aid has the headline, when the buying stops, the killing can too. So we are the problem. We who provide the market. Why are they out there taking tuna?
And
Because squid. Oh, the poor squid. They
look so harmless, when you look at them in the freezer,
Yeah, it's just
get over it.
yeah.
We did get over it for the most part with wild birds.
Mhm.
We did get over it for the most part with whales. We must think about the industrial fishing as a crime against humanity, not just a crime against nature.
Mhm.
That's our life support system that's being wrecked. And because we don't think about them in the same way that we do other aspects of life. We've taken the ocean for granted, and life in the ocean is regarded as only valuable when you kill it.
And it's also the whole issue of the bycatch that goes on. So many of the species that are being targeted, a lot of other fish are killed in the process.
And squid
and squid and every other thing else. Yeah. And Talia is asking the question about Hope the whale shark. Max, do you know if that whale shark is being tracked with an actual GPS tag, or was it being done with photo identification?
It was, GPS tracked, but then it got lost. Somewhere outside west of the islands. I mean, outside of the economic exclusive zone, and actually was just on a time when there were a lot of vessels there. We know, as I said, that the fishing fleet, it's a fishing fleet for squid, the Humboldt squid, that has been growing, faster because we go down the trophic chain, fishing everything. We finish this, we're going down. That's what we're doing now, fishing squid. And we don't know if it's hard to think that one of those vessels actually catch Hope, but who else is outside there too? I mean, there are many other fleets on long lines too that comes different time, or sometimes the same time, the overlap. I mean, there's a lot of fishing pressure. What it makes Galapagos special is exactly what is going to bring more and more of this pressure over Galapagos in the future, and all of these rich areas in the world. And that's why we need to protect them before it is too late, even for the same fishermen of Ecuador too. But it is important to remember that those things are connected.
So it's country by country, government by government, but together through the United Nations and the policies about high seas fishing, about how we have allowed the regional fisheries organizations to claim the ocean as if the ocean is there to extract things from it. And we have to rethink one of the 6 pillars that Cristina described, to rethink the fishing whole concept of what we're taking out of the ocean. What is it really worth? Is it just dead fish values? Can we not think about blue carbon? Can we not think about how all of this ties together as part of our life support system? can we not just show some respect for other forms of life? I mean, there are values that go beyond dollars and cents.
That's an interesting question, Sylvia. So somebody's asking, that the expansion of the marine protected area would impact the tuna fishermen, and what do we say to those fishermen? And I'm thinking, find another job, but maybe that's not super diplomatic.
Well, they will have to find another job when all the tunas are gone.
It's true enough.
Right.
So few left now. It's a wonder that there's still tuna out there, considering how many there once were and how few there now are. Every tuna counts. Every tuna counts. And it's not
talk a little bit about the subsidies.
It's also the yellowfin. It's also the smaller tunas. They all live by the same recipe. They're high on the food chain, and they all store carbon, and they all transport. They're part of the circulation of the elements that maintain the ocean in a productive sense. And yes,
I agree. Can you talk about the subsidies a little bit, Max? How does that work? How do governments subsidize these fishing fleets to?
Yeah. So I wanted to answer also your question you just made. I mean, I think this is an opportunity for the fishermen itself. There is the plan of or the idea of expanding through a new marine protected area. Probably the president can do it. And that can also be, the industry can be part of that. I've seen in many of the campaigns that I've been working, the industry saying, "Oh, we're gonna go out of business. Oh, we're gonna lose jobs. You're gonna have the country in a depression," and all of that. That never happened. Anywhere I have been working, that never happened. Just look at the information of the Papahānaumokuākea, Hawaii, the expansion. The industry were like, "No, we're gonna go out of business," and like, guess what? There's a lot more tuna right now because of that marine protected area. Subsidies are a key element here, Cristina, because what happened is like, imagine that someone gives you money for bringing, some specific, bring me a rock. I want, a rock. I don't care about what the color will be. I pay you for that. I will, pay whatever you need for actually going there. Go get the blue rocks, no? You get all the blue rocks, and then, well, I'm gonna keep just going with the green, and then I'm gonna go with the yellow, and it doesn't matter because someone is paying you for going to get them. It just doesn't respond to the business anymore. The business is to maintain the business itself. Exactly. And then you go overfishing one species, another species, and then you ask the government, okay, now can you actually pay for this vessel to go deeper? Now, with the nets or with whatever the year it is, can you make this, new application for the computers to find the fish even better and easily now? That kind of is a competition, is a running constantly on getting better on capturing every single fish, because someone is giving you the money to do that. You cut the money, they cannot even go out like few miles because the oil itself, it's very expensive. They wouldn't even been able to pay.
That's right.
The fish that they're capturing, the cost of that.
Can't afford it. So I think we've got a couple more raised hands. I'm going to ask Arnold to come in.
Thank you. So Ella must have hand fatigue by this time. So
sorry,
Ella, if you're still there, unmute yourself. We'd love to hear your question.
Oops, I wasn't prepared. I actually had. I actually sent it in a text, but my question, which has already been answered, is what is an immediate action that we can do that can help progress the awareness for everyone, because it's very frustrating, I'm sure, as you know, that no matter how much I speak to people about limiting or completely taking fish off the table, or even pollution, it just seems that people, they just don't care enough to stop doing what they're doing. So I know that it's a kind of a hard question to ask, but what would be an immediate thing that we could all do? That's my question.
Well, lead by example, which you apparently are already doing.
And that's a great first step. And really, until people start to understand that eating a lot of this wild fish at this point is really beginning to impact their health and not in a good way. We're seeing so much bioaccumulation of all the things that we're putting into the ocean, as Christina was saying, the sewage, the pharmaceuticals, these things that accumulate in fish. Mercury. It's not really that great for your health. I mean, particularly pregnant women are encouraged not to eat too much wild fish anymore because of things that it can be carrying along
plastics.
with it. And plastics,
microplastics. Get the microplastics.
I would say just because we're doing this each of us individually alone, and it doesn't feel like it has a cumulative effect, but trust me, it does.
It does.
Because so many of us are speaking up and talking to everybody. Like, nobody invites me to dinner anymore because I work for everybody. But I feel like the time to be polite and not say something is over, so I question the choices that people make, and if they don't invite me anymore, I'll have my my salad on my own.
That veggie sushi.
We have another. So one thing also, it's politics. Get involved in politics.
Yeah.
I mean, climate change is politics. I mean, you don't want to see it, but it is. Like for everyone, say like, oh, let's not politicize this conversation. No, it is politics. I mean, get involved. You are voting for people or not, the beliefs or not on climate change, or or for people who are actually doing the things that you want them to do. Protecting more areas, doing better management on fisheries. I mean, that's part of the decisions of politicians too. We are the ones who actually vote for them.
And vote for science supporters. And there's a question here in the list about aquaculture, and we know a lot about aquaculture, and some of it can be done really well, but a lot of it is still done so poorly, right, Sylvia? And it's hard to tell which product came from where. So
do the homework, right? Read those labels, and
a lot of work.
And
well, I tell you what. I mean, don't consume salmon farm in Chile. I mean, it is just a disaster.
Salmon farmed anywhere, Max. It's
terrible. No, it's like farming. I mean, first of all, species that actually are carnivores. I mean, like that's a very hard way to actually, how are you actually going to make that green? No, it is complicated. And in places like Patagonia, the fjords, where more than 90% of the land is already protected, that should be the economic driven, like driver, like it should be conservation. We actually can make business out of conservation.
Speaking about how difficult it is to make these choices, Liz, are things like that little booklet that the Monterey Bay Aquarium used to put out, are they still useful for people to tell what they eat? I mean, I'd rather not eat any of it, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that it doesn't really account for a lot of the things that Max was talking about, like how much fuel does it take to go out and pursue this fish 200 miles offshore?
Or how old is that
how
fish?
old is the fish?
That's not accounted for.
How long does it take them to become big and productive?
Mm-hmm.
And so
it's a starting point.
It's a starting point, but it's kind of feeble,
You need to ask questions and look at the evidence that is there. The biggest problem that we are now facing, although in terms of the fishing, illegal fishing is a problem. Unregulated fishing is a problem. Unreported fishing, big problem. But the biggest problem is the legal fishing. It's legal to have those Chinese fishing vessels outside the exclusive economic zone of the Galapagos. It's not right, but it's legal. Our laws have not caught up with the reality of the problems that we now actually have to cope with. So just because a fish is there in the market, it may be there legally, it doesn't mean that it's right. We have to change the laws to catch up with the reality.
Even in the store chains, like my children never wanted to go shopping with me to Trader Joe's because I would grab, a package of orange Roffy and take it to the manager, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, Mom, you're embarrassing us." But just because it's there and it was caught legally doesn't make it moral. This is
right.
a fish that
we know better.
Years.
Yeah, do the right thing.
Yeah,
I always say it actually. Yeah. I mean, the illegal fishing, it's a very clear problem. But I always said the biggest problem is actually overfishing. and that is done by legal fishing. And so,
And even
you
our
know, that's very important that you need to keep in mind. And just to say, you know, like, I think a decision like, and someone, Erika Carrera, a good friend from Ecuador, asking, if you do actually some measure, like expanding or creating a new marine protected area around the Galapagos, the fishermen itself will be benefit. They will not be damaged. Again and again, I don't know how many times I need to repeat it. And it is important for everybody to understand this is not against one or the other. It's in favor of the planet.
Yeah, Max, people are asking because the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, actually recommends that we eat fish at least once a week.
right.
And now we're seeing fishing fleets going as far as Antarctica to remove the krill, the foundation of the Antarctic food chain, to answer this, you know, demand for more fish.
We haven't caught up with the reality. That's the thing. So, again, we have to get the integrity of the system to reflect the reality of what's happening in nature. We're still abiding by rules that were made 50 years ago or 100 years ago. The attitudes about the ocean, these have deep roots. They don't match with the reality of what we now face. And again, because it's been a habit, doesn't mean that it's right. Because it's legal, doesn't mean it's right.
Exactly.
We need to catch up and modify our behavior through personal choices now that we know what we know. The knowledge is there. It's not a mystery. It's not, there's much more we need to know, but we know enough to know that we've really got to treat the ocean and life in the ocean in a new way.
We really do.
Those of us who vote in the UN, vote for somebody who cares about the future of the planet.
Yeah.
So
and, I think we're going to have to do a couple more chapters of this, because I mean,
we've got so many questions. I'm like, I'm sort of nudging her. We've got,
be quiet.
We've got
this year might be a very protected area there, and they're countries fishing for krill to feed salmon. I mean, what a crazy thing. And then we have all the salmon farming and all of that itself. I mean, we have so much to talk, but I just want to, and I'm going to start saying maybe goodbye for you guys to kind of also take your time. But I just want to ask again, Ecuadorians in particular, people of the world, there is a place called Galapagos. You haven't seen it directly. You want to see it. And if you want to see it one day, as I have seen it, you're going to have to put some pressure. You're going to have to do something to save that place. And I just invite everyone, because it's a beautiful thing to do for your kids, for yourself, for the fish, for everyone. And I just thank you. And Cristina, you are an inspiration to me. I am a photographer, never as good as you in any of the collective of Sea Legacy. I love your work. And Sylvia, what can I tell you? You are the second love of my life, I have to say.
All right. Falling back into this, you guys. So two more raised hand questions. We're going to let Arnold select, and then we are going to have to wrap it up. We have a lot of raised hands.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been very educational, and I've followed all your work for a very long time, and I've watched Mission Blue more times than I can count. So yeah, thank you so much for doing this. And it's kind of crazy because I've been to the Galapagos late last year, and in the last couple of days, I've actually been putting together a project to bring awareness to this whole fishing fleet in the Galapagos. I have a notepad in front of me from all these different calls I've taken with Migramar and SOS Galapagos, and trying to connect the dots and tell this story in a proper way that can obviously educate people and create some real impact. And I guess more than a question, I just want to say that this is something that has been close to my heart for as long as I can remember. And I'm just trying to do my part as somebody that creates content, that understands social media and the whole millennial and technological generation, also keeping in mind how short attention spans are. You know, this is something I'm very passionate about, and I'm just trying to, you know, understand all the elements, because we know that, you know, there's a lot of pressure and in some ways even cooperation with the fisheries, the tuna fisheries, the shark fishers, and the government. So that's one part of the story, but also just the science and the communities. And, you know, to find a true solution, you do have to work with the locals and, you know, provide that alternative, you know, income, because as you guys, I'm sure, realize, they're all realizing that their, you know, livelihoods are running out, and this is not going to last future generations. So, you know, I'd love to maybe connect with one of you guys offline and just tell you some of the things that I've uncovered, because I've talked to locals that are out there and gotten information about some of the buoys that they are using that are actually drifting into those marine protected areas, even though their vessels are outside. And there's a lot of things, and part of me wants to just go to the Galapagos or go to Ecuador and do that, you know, investigative journalism that, you know, oftentimes can really, you know, that picture that speaks a million words or whatever it is. So there's a lot of different moving parts here that I'm slowly putting together, but I just want to say that, you know, I'm just one person, but I've always believed that, you know, any one person can make a huge impact, and that's just
No kidding.
That's absolutely right. Well, thank you very much. Arnold, we have one more. Okay. All right, I guess that's going to be wrapping it up now, because we've kind of crept way past the top of the hour. But I want to thank everyone again for joining us on this special episode of Dive In. We have this conversation with the ocean community typically every 2 weeks. On September 24th, we're going to be joined by the artist Wyland, and we're going to be talking about water. So you can find
art.
And art, of course.
And the ocean.
And you can find information on upcoming events in email of Mission Blue and the Ocean Elders on social media channels. And a very special thank you to our producers, Medley Media and the Ocean Elders, and of course Max and Christina for joining us today, and all of you viewers. We really couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much. And we will have these questions circulated amongst us, and hopefully have some, you know, direct follow-up from Christina, Max, and ourselves.
Yeah.
And until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.